Again, I told you we were likely going to form this divergence here, get a Class A divergence or confirmation of a lower high. We already got a Class B divergence. Changed my mind that, again, because of a Class B divergence, I still think a Class A divergence could develop. And again, we could get this double top here and still go a little bit higher. Told you I was looking for a divergence over here to go higher right here. We got it. But again, with the potential breakout and back test, again, I think they're going to suck in more bulls before they pull the carpet out, just like again with the bears. I told you down over here and down over here, we were going to get the short squeeze. Bears thought, oh, we're going to go. The perma bears thought, oh, we're going to continue to collapse. Bounced off key support levels, Bitcoin's average price, the 50-week moving average. I talked about all of this. And get your short squeeze, which again I've been predicting, and now again sucking in the bulls, sucking in the longs, I think over here, and then on into these levels, suck in the longs, and then pull the carpet out from underneath them. If we get the double top, if we get the legitimate breakout, see those weekly signals turn back to bullish. But here, as this is forming, again, I've talked about a 4-hour chart. And before I show you that to you, just let me say this again. I've talked about these trend lines. I talked about the bounces down here at these levels, along with, again, Bitcoin's average price right here and the 50-week moving average. We bounced off these levels. I talked about it. I talked about over here how we we're going to go back and test that level. I talked over here how we we're going to move down towards that trend line. We overthrew it, and we hit our 50-week moving average of Bitcoin's average price. But again, it's correct in hitting these levels, just as I talked about over here, moving back up to test this trend line. I told you I thought we'd overthrow it. Did. I told you I thought we'd stall at 70 to 71,000. We overthrew that just slightly, 73,000. And again, I'm evaluating things as they happen. Now I believe that we're probably going to make it look like we have a breakout and back test and probably form this rising wedge. The signals can turn back to bullish and remain that way. Again, good chance we're seeing the freak show with 2021 and the topping process, a very similar topping process to what we had in 2021. Nobody thinks that's possible. Have a bunch of people buying the top. Oh, it's a breakout. And again, that's exactly what happened back in 2021. People bought the top, and then the bottom fell out of Bitcoin. It could happen. Recession is coming. Given the bullish scenario that if we can rally into the beginning of the recession, that is possible that we rally into the first quarter. I've talked about that. I hope you hear my bullish scenario as soon as we get everything turning back to bullish and remaining that way. I want to talk to you about this 4-hour chart. I've remained in the camp that we're getting a double top pattern in all likelihood on the weekly chart. As I've talked about, I told you we can rise back up. And again, we had that bottoming tail my last update. We went a little tiny bit lower, but then we're now forming this bullish divergence right now that, again, above our 200 period moving average. We've dropped below the 50. Now we're coming back up to it. Again, we can get a lower high, or we can blow right through this area, get a higher high, go to the 74, 75, 76,000, even a little bit higher. Again, the peak in 2021 was about $4,000 or $5,000 above the previous peak. This is a 60-minute chart. So again, no divergence over here, likely going to form one or a confirmation of a lower high here on the 4-hour chart. Again, these divergences, this marked the bottom, this marked this peak over here. And again, I told you about both of those moves before they happened, the sell-off before it happened, the rally before it happened here. Again, this low at 52,000 or so. I'm sorry, that was the other one, the pullback. That was the 59,000 low. But talked about both of those, talked about prior to it. Let me zoom out so you can see what I'm talking about. And here it is again, talked about the diversions here before this sell-off right here, talked about this diversions for this bottom right here, talked about the diversions before the sell-off over here. And again, my signals warned of this, and the 4-hour chart did an excellent job of confirming that. And then again, talked about the lows at the 52,000 area and warned you, even had a Class B divergence there with these two equal lows right here and price moving lower. But again, the signals did a really good job of marking the bottom down over here, the rallies that took place, the pullback, and the pullback here. Very good job. And even this pullback, I told you, again, last Tuesday that we were going to see the rally end up failing in all likelihood and get a back test. The Moon Boys and the Moon Girls were telling us, no, that's not going to happen. Again, I told you I thought it would happen. And then again, we evaluated the situation. I think that we're either going to get a lower high or a higher high to complete a double top on that weekly chart, as I've talked about. So we still may go higher again, 74, 75, 76, maybe even 77. Again, we were about $4,000 above the first peak that was made in early 2021 when we made the second peak. Could see something very similar to that. But again, absolutely incredible signals here in the 4-hour time frame. And again, look at the MACD firming up. Again, it's probably going to come up here and form a divergence. Again, like these other divergences that I've talked about. And again, that will probably mark a peak. Again, it could confirm a lower high. But again, I've reevaluated the situation. I think you're going to get that class A divergence that still forms on that daily chart. And we could see a Class A divergence here on the RSI and on the MACD in this 4-hour time frame. Pretty remarkable signals here in the 4-hour time frame. Please support the channel with the link directly below. I don't have any sponsors. I turn all those offers down because I don't want to sell you things. I just ask that you partner with me. If you like the indicators, if you like the charts, please support the channel today. Allows me to be able to provide you this information. The money made on YouTube is through sponsors. I don't choose to use that model. A lot of shady deals on the internet. I don't want any part of that. I don't want to sell you stuff. I need to hear from you in order to make it work. If you like my signals, if you like the charts, please let me know that by supporting the channel today. And I talked about the divergence on my indicators. Again, predicting that we would have a back test. I told you we can see a topping tail the weekly time frame. That's exactly what happened. But again, talking about getting a triple divergence on some of my indicators, get a double top that's similar to the 2021 top. Later in the video, I'll be talking about the freak show between the 2021 top and now. There's some very interesting similarities. Again, we came back just overthrew this trend line, hit the other trend line actually. And again, I talked about a bullish divergence on my indicators. Looks like that's going to be the case, or confirmation of a lower high. Could come up here to the upper band here. And again, that would take us into the 74, 75,000 area. We end up forming the divergence, which I think is very, very possible. And I told you the warning signs were present before we had the sell-off here. Again, signals had a divergence. They could form a triple divergence if we recycle back up here. I think that could be the case. I had divergences here, like with momentum and some of the signals I'm showing you in the video. RSI, we had that Class B divergence where it had two equal peaks. Here we had lower highs. We'll see if we get another lower high, get triple divergences, and get a lower high Class A divergence on the RSI, which I'll be talking about in this video. The cloud broke, okay, and again, it turned back to bearish, but the ribbon is still bullish. The ribbon up here is still bullish. We're still above the short-term trend here. So again, momentum with this bar we're getting right now is trying to flip back to bullish here as far as the impulse line right here. It's trying to turn back to bullish. A little hard to see there. It can close bullish. Then again, we can get a presidential election rally or a rally with the Fed. We'll be watching. Momentum line here, if I switch charts again, the bar is red, reflecting momentum. The momentum line is still bearish. But again, if we do get a bigger rally, that could flip back and we can get something that looks like either this, where we went to a higher high, but momentum here at this time was still bullish. Here it's bearish, so it's probably more like over here, where again it turned bearish, but then flipped back to bullish for about 5 sessions, went to a higher high, and then turned back to bearish, and we saw that sell-off and reversal. Could see something like what we had over here rather than over here. The tops are very similar in that you got topping signals and then you went a little bit higher. You got some topping signals, you went a little bit higher, and then you had the sell-off. So again, I think these signals are warning that a top is developing. Now, they could have just been warning of the sell-off that we got of 9%, but they could also be warning of a top here. And again, these sell signals, we could see more of them get a lower high or a higher high. So again, could be very, very similar peak I showed you earlier back over here at the June high. So again, something worth paying attention to if a divergence does develop on the RSI, Class A divergence, and we get some triple divergences there on other indicators in the daily time frame. And I want to continue to point out, I have a potential rising wedge on Bitcoin. And again, if we get this big rally, right now we're up 4% as I'm making the video. Latter portion, or the latter half of the video was made first. We were still rallying, but the video here that I'm making made last, and we're seeing this rally continue. I talk about this throughout the video. And again, if we get this divergence, we could come up here to this upper boundary trend line, pierce the previous peak, possibly form this rising wedge. You do have a possible head and shoulders here, or again, if we move to a higher high, was a lower high scenario. The higher high scenario, if we come up in here, get an election rally, a rally with the Fed, and then see this thing break down, you still have a possible head and shoulders here under construction in a larger rising wedge pattern. Signals had divergences at the last two peaks, the one over here, and this one I didn't mark yet, but it had it, and talked about these divergences on my oscillators. And again, the RSI made two equal peaks. Other indicators made these divergences, and we got that 8% rally fizzling out. We dropped 9%. We came back to this trend line, which is pretty fascinating to me. This one we broke above it. This is the real trend line, the real breakout right here. This trend line right here was the backtest area, though, so very interesting. And again, this possible rising wedge could form triple divergence on my indicators. Quickly look at the trend line. Again, the one that we're backtesting, when we backtested, I took it from this peak right here, I excluded the shadows right here, and I took it from, remember when I was predicting we go to 70,000, we went up, we hit that trend line right on the nose, remember that? That's the trend line that we backtested. Here again, it was a kind of a fake out, because really, the trend line is really from this peak here to this peak right here, and again to this peak, and then now we're breaking out. And again, both trend lines pretty fascinating, but this was the real breakout. Again, volume increased with this bar right here, but again, it could have been short covering. Possible rising wedge. I think we can form another reference point of a divergence and go higher. Could get a lower high, but again, possible double top, as you'll see later. And again, the freak show with the 2021 top. A lot of similarities with the 2021 top. Even the euphoria is exactly the same. You dare to say, hey, we could be topping because of a recession, because of the dollar breakout. Volatility is suggesting a top right here. Then you're shouted down. Now, again, if we get a legitimate breakout, we get a legitimate breakout. I really don't care which way Bitcoin moves. Pointing out that there is a possibility of a double top. And I've talked about the bullish scenario where we could rally into the beginning of a recession. That is also a possibility. Signals in the weekly time frame turn bullish and can remain that way without getting a reversal. The moment of truth here, do we get a breakout back test and have it successfully give us a rally, form a top? Again, I've been talking about this Bitcoin divergence on the RSI, and I told you, possible Bitcoin is putting in a double top similar to the top in 2021. It's almost a freak show. Again, the peak over here in March 21, the first peak was in April. Just right after that, we get an April peak right here, a lower high, sold off 33% to the 50-week moving average. In 2021, went down to the 50-week moving average. This is a daily, but the 50-week moving average bounced and then rallied back up, and again came back up, and we moved just above that peak. So again, if we do, a possible double top in play. If we get a lower high, and I've marked both scenarios here, NVIDIA could be doing this as well. Now, again, it could be we go further above this level. Again, I've just marked the 75,000 area. We can go a bit higher than that. Over here was 73,700. 2021, I think we went $4,000 or $5,000 above the previous peak, so it could go a little higher. Did you hear what I just said? It could go a little higher. I'm just drawing a trend line here, and again, the horizontal resistance over here that I thought we would break above the trend line, try to form a divergence. But it was a class B, two equal peaks with price going higher. So again, we could still get a lower high scenario surrounding the election or the Fed. We could still form a higher high, but I am looking for a larger double top pattern here. Unless the bulls can turn everything to bullish and have it remain that way. Even if they turn the weekly signals back to bullish, it either means we're going sideways or up. If it means we're going sideways, you could still form a larger divergence and then have the thing end up failing. Keep in mind, it's about the staying power. You've got to be able to flip the signals to bullish, and they got to remain bullish. Again, a bearish divergence or a lower high to finish a possible double top, unless the bulls can flip everything back to bullish and have it remain that way. Back testing the trend line right here from the low here to the low here. We broke that level, and we broke this trend line as well. And I talked about, again, pulling back. We had a bottoming tail a couple days ago. Again, candlesticks got to be confirmed. It wasn't confirmed. We went just a little bit lower. And now we're attempting rebound, but we're back testing this trend line. If we can get back above it, again, this trend line comes into play. Overhead resistance comes into play. Here I've excluded the shadow. If we include the shadow, it overthrows this previous peak of 73,700. And be watching to see, does a divergence develop here, Class A divergence, where we get a lower high on the RSI. Whoops, its price action went away for a second there. The divergence, a Class A divergence, where the RSI makes a lower high, and then we get a higher high with price. Could look something like this, could look something like this, could look something like this, where we've had these kind of divergences with topping tails on them. Each one of these peaks has had a divergence. Just go a little bit further back, you can see the one here that created the top previously over here. And again, we were just a couple $100 below that level, just under $200 below that level. We'll be watching to see, do we come up here and again, form a rising wedge, with the red boundary here, and again, maybe this boundary here or this boundary right here. Do we see something like that with the election and see an overthrow of this level? Just a little bit here, and again, possible double top in play. And MACD's rolled over. We're rebounding right now by a 2.25%, be a little bit higher than that. It started to pull back 2.68% at the moment, but again, watch the MACD. It's rolled over. It's still in positive territory. The MACD went slightly higher. Okay, so again, it could be that we see a little divergence develop or confirmation of a lower high. So we'll be watching. Now, the bullish case is that we have a bull flag pattern breaking out. We're back testing, and we're going to clear 69,000, stay above it, not drop back below it anymore, that we're just back testing. That's it. Get a legitimate breakout. We stay above the peak from March, flip the weekly signals to bullish, and they remain that way. That's the bullish scenario. Now, the dollar's pulling back a little bit. That could help Bitcoin continue to get a rally, a presidential election rally or a Fed rally. Problem is, the dollar's broken out. It's back tested, and again, it bounced off the 200-week moving average, horizontal support levels, a support zone. It'll probably pull back, and then Bitcoin will likely start following it. They currently have at the moment a positive correlation. They're both going higher. Which one's right? Which one's wrong? One of them's wrong. I think the dollar pulls back, and then Bitcoin eventually tops out, follows. Bitcoin will probably keep going down, and the dollar will start going back up. It got above this level right here. The dollar has come to this trend line right here from this peak and the peak over here. So again, I think when it breaks this next trend line after pulling back, it will really hurt Bitcoin. Again, in order for Bitcoin to be bullish, the dollar has to collapse below the support zone and take out the 200-week moving average, not get a breakout and back test here on the weekly chart. We had this bullish divergence give us this rally. We'll probably see a confirmation of a higher low. Could get a divergence there if we go back to the support zone, but more than likely you're going to get a higher low on the dollar. Dollar has a long-term negative correlation with Bitcoin. When Bitcoin peaked in 2021 and the dollar broke out again, eventually the dollar soared and Bitcoin collapsed 78%. So again, bullish scenario could be that if signals do turn back to bullish and remain that way for Bitcoin, it could rally into January, February if my signals can remain bullish, rally into the beginning of a recession. That is possible. If scenario happens, then I'll be watching this trend line right here from the peak here and the peak over here. The signals in the weekly time frame would have to turn bullish and then be able to remain that way. That's the key. The signals have to turn bullish. Now, on momentum, we've already had a divergence in the daily time frame give us this sell-off. And again, we rallied by 8% above this peak over here. For the week, we gave it all back. We gave it all back, and we declined by just over 9%, I believe. And now we're trying to rally back up. So again, do we get a lower high or a higher high? Three big problems. Okay, let me start again for a second here. I had an interruption. Problems, the dollar breakout, okay? Second problem, volatility is suggesting a top. Third problem, recession indicators have flashed. Bitcoin has to be able to have a bull market in a recession. That's going to be extremely difficult and highly unlikely. So again, it's more likely we're forming a topping process. Now again, the recession signals flashed. In September, we got it with the uninverting of the yield curve. So again, 3 to 6 months, we're likely going to see a recession from that level. So again, it's still possible that Bitcoin tries to form a bigger rally ahead of the recession starting if my signals, which are correct, begin to turn back to bullish. If they don't, we could see a top here going into a recession, ahead of a recession, I should say, rather than just before it. My signals have been bullish. Again, we've seen a 40% rise. My signals were bullish, most of that except for the pullback, which I correctly called. Signals correctly called this pullback and the one that we have right now. I told you, again, we could have a topping tail by the end of the week from last week. We did. Again, the signals correct in my prediction about the topping tail happening and a potential backtest. But I still think you've got a possible double top here unless we could see signals all begin to turn back to bullish. You might see a triple divergence develop right here, that we go, higher and then again get a double top or again lower high. If we go higher, again, you could go to 74, 75, 76,000 very easily. In 2021, we went $4,000 or $5,000 above the previous peak. So again, that could take it on into 77, 78,000 or something. We'll be watching to see how it unfolds. But again, still a strong possibility of a double top here, and a recession has been dismissed. The herd, even Larry Fink is dismissing a recession, but yet the recession indicators that have a proven track record for decades, the inverted yield curve, the Psalm rule with the unemployment rate, which is the 3-month moving average, they're flashing recession. These signals have not been wrong. Marked recessions correctly for decades. Not going to be wrong this time. So I'll be looking for a possible divergence here, and if it does form or confirmation of a lower high, again, similar to here, similar to here, similar to here, similar to here, then I think we could see, again, a double top pattern form and just pierce this upper previous peak at 73,700 or so. We're watching to see how it unfolds. We could get a presidential election, maybe sell off with the Fed or a rally with the presidential election and the Fed, and then begin to sell off afterwards. In the freak show, have some very interesting similarities. Now, again, I told you before we had the rally, we were going to get it. I told you we were going to move above these highs, but I thought it'd be a false breakout. I told you it'd likely stall around 70 to 71,000 if that happened, above that 69,000, 68, 69,000 area, which again, we went just a little bit higher than that to 73,000 and some change. But because we only got a Class B divergence with that rally, I told you, again, it may be a peak right there, but I'm telling you, it's still, and we could rally back up, get a lower high or even a higher high, because I think we have, again, a double top pattern that is developing. And again, that is the pattern that formed in 2021. We had a massive double top pattern with the two peaks. Here we could put in a slightly lower high or get a higher high, and again, $3,000 to $5,000 higher above the peak over here at the March high. But the freak show. Now check out the freak show. Again, look at this. Over here, we peaked in April. We had a March peak and an April peak. The April peak was slightly higher in the 2021 top. Then we peaked here in November. So you had an April peak to a November peak. Here we have a March peak. The second peak was in April, but we have a lower high here. Here we got a higher high, but again, you had a very similar top surrounding first half of the year. Here it was in April, here it was in March. Okay, and then and the close was actually, that closing high was in late March. So again, you have this March peak, and then you have now this peak in November with the topping tail, at least so far. Well, here we had a November peak. Here we had an April peak to November. We had a topping process that formed throughout the year. After the peak in the first half of the year, we moved to the 50 period. After the peak in the first half of the year, we moved to the 50 period. We bounced. And then we went back up and we tested the highs. Here we went higher. Here we're just below the high. We still may move above it. The show continues. The 10-week drop below the 20-week moving average. The 10-week drop below the 20-week moving average. It got back above it, and we revisited the highs. It got back above it. The 10 got back above it. We revisit the highs. So again, it is very possible we have a topping process in the form of a double top that looks something like this. The euphoria right here is very similar to what it was back over here, back over here. Same thing right here. We had the euphoria. We were told that these sell-offs of distribution were not going to happen, but yet they did. My signals called them back and forth as they happened, but again, told that they weren't. We were told back over here we were never dropping below 60,000. We had gotten just to back above it, and again, we ended up getting a 55% drop back to that 50-week moving average, and again, we got back up here, and I remember back up here because I had called the top and completely attacked for daring to say that Bitcoin was topping and not going to 100,000, and yet everybody, and then people got sucked in and, oh, it's a breakout, and no, it was a fake out. We tried it right there, couldn't do it, tried it right there, couldn't do it, and we dropped very quickly, 52%. Drop here, an attempted rebound, and continue, but we dropped in January by 52%. We had peaked in November, so a very rapid decline that, you were a dope if you thought that Bitcoin wasn't going to be at 100,000 before the end of 2021. So again, a very similar, pattern developing here. Here it was a 33% drop. Here it was a 55% drop, a little bit more steep over here, rapid. Here it was a little bit more choppy. Nonetheless, you've got a freak show going on. Similarities with the move back to the 50 period, the crossovers of bearish and bullish crossovers with the 10 and 20 week moving averages. The months are very close to the first peak and possibly a second peak. Now, again, we're being told how bullish the first quarter or the fourth quarter is going to be. That again, Bitcoin is supposed to be at over 100,000 before this quarter ends, and again, that's what they were saying over here. And I'm just telling you, the euphoria is the same. Now, again, if we get a legitimate breakout, somehow manage to dodge a recession, see the dollar completely collapse, well, you got a shot at it then. Signals turn back to bullish in the weekly time frame and stay that way. Here, again, even if they turn back to bullish, you could still be going sideways. They turned back to bullish over here, but then quickly failed. And then everybody said, oh, here it goes, here it goes, here it goes, here we go. This is it. And then, again, I called another top the very day of the top because we hit the 200 period moving average the day we hit it, and we got a topping tail right there, and we completed a bear flag pattern hitting this upper boundary right here, and that was a continuation of this. But another top made another unpopular call in the bottom thought of Bitcoin, which we were told was not going to happen until it formed a bullish divergence down here. So again, we'll be watching. Now, we can get a lower high right here, or we can get a higher high like this. But again, to have a bull market going forward with Bitcoin, things got to turn back to bullish. It's got to remain that way. Only other scenario I see for a bullish event is if we get a rally ahead of the recession, just right before it starts, and maybe a rally into January or February or March of 2025, that first quarter. That could happen if the signals remain bullish and we see legitimate evidence that Bitcoin wants to go higher in the weekly time frame. Again, I'll be watching to see, do the signals turn back to bullish, and then can they remain that way? If they can remain that way, then you could possibly rally into the recession. It would be a bullish scenario that could take us into the first quarter, and I'm open-minded to that. I'm just telling you there's the possibility of a double top here with this freak show that's going on. The similarities between 2021 are pretty remarkable. And then lastly, before I leave this chart, Nobody thinks that we're topping here. Everybody thinks, oh, it's a breakout, it's a breakout. And again, my signals turn back to bullish over here. The bounce off the 50-week moving average back over here. Again, I talked about all this. Whoops, sorry about that. I had a distraction there for a second. The Moon Boys are just telling us, oh, we're just now breaking out. They told us all these sell-offs weren't going to happen. My signals, we've moved up by 40% now, the low to the high. The Moon Boys told us that was never going to happen, the sell-off, and then again, the rebound. My signals have been making pretty incredible calls. Boys are still waiting for us to push above this high. We're just directly underneath it. We hit it. We came up to it by just under $200, and then we turned down off of it, rallying 8%, giving it all back. We'll probably rally back up and test it again. But again, we could see something similar to this right here, this double top formation. Could see something very, very similar to that. So don't rule that out. We'll be watching. Do we get a legitimate breakout, or is it a fake out? This was a fake out. You went up, you pierced these levels, and then you reversed off of them. You did it a couple of times. We could do it another time this week and move above that March high. And here, again, like I said, we moved up here a few $1,000s. I think it was $4,000 or $5,000 higher than this peak. I think this was $64,000 or $65,000, and we moved up to just under $69,000, around $4,000 or $5,000. Just get this peak here for you. What was this? $64,000 or $65,000? Yeah, it looks like it was $64,000 and some change. And then this peak right here was just under, or just right at that $69,000 area. So again, see if the freak show continues here in the weekly time frame. It is pretty bizarre. Polarities with the moving averages, the 10, 20, and 50. The months that we peaked in, very, very close to the first half of the year here, getting these peaks right here. And then now, again, the latter half of the year in the month of November. Pretty fascinating stuff. And let me just say one other thing. The Moon Boys and the Moon Girls, oh, they're very, very mad. And again, we've declined for 7.5 months, and now back up at these levels. And now we've seen this rally fizzle out. We rallied up and we failed. I told you that was likely going to be the case. I got that correct again. Along with the other amazing calls that my signals have made, and the Moon Boys and the Moon Girls is what they're saying. It's a shakeout. It's a shakeout for the weak hands. And again, if my signals turn back to bullish, then maybe that's so. Turn back to bullish in the weekly time frame, but also could be a double top. So we're watching to see which way it unfolds. What a freak show with the 2021 top.